Okay, welcome to anybody who's watching this. Over the last 4 years or so, the Proptech sector has started to shake out, and a number of us actually talk to each other. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ed Mead. I'm the co-founder and a director at Viewber, the outsourced viewing and inspection service, and today I'm talking to...
My name's Ishmael Herrera-Lee. I am the CEO and founder of Prospect Engine, and we are a lead management and prospecting service for estate agents.
Okay, I suppose the clue in that is in the name, Prospect Engine. And I know both of our businesses have been around 3.5, 4 years. They've matured. You were giving me a figure, I think you said 5.3 billion. Is that right? Of property?
Yes. Since inception in March 2017, we've had a direct hand in listing over 5.3 billion pounds of the property to the market for our network partners.
Okay, well that's pretty impressive. And at Viewber, we've just done 110,000 valuation, and this is where are we now? Middle of July 2020. So so both businesses have been around a little bit. So just try and tell people who are listening to this or watching this, Ish, what Prospect Engine does in a paragraph or so.
Yeah, so we're a white labeled outsourced prospecting firm. We work predominantly through agent CRMs, targeting historic data, so previous appraisals, landlords, listings, withdrawn stock, applicants with properties to sell on the market, not on the market, selling privately. And we also lead manage, so we will handle any type of lead source, giving immediacy of response within 5 minutes by personal telephone call, along with other mediums of communication. So we have a text messaging nurture sequence and an email nurture sequence. And then it goes into a really robust call plan to make sure that they're getting volume of calls, ultimately improving conversion rates of new leads and new inquiries by up to 100% from a business's own retained staff.
And it might sound like a daft question, but are the people you got at the ends of the phone, do they know what they're talking about? These are not people sitting in the Philippines.
Yes. Again, I did some analysis just the other day, and one of our agents actually helped list over 600 million pounds of the property to the market last year alone. I'm sure if you put them in a league table of the top performing agents in the country, they'd probably be up there in the top sort of 1-2%. In fact, all of my agents are ex-agents coming from a property or property finance background.
Okay, well, I mean, 65% of our viewers are ex-property, so it's a similar thing. Obviously, it's really helpful to have that as a background.
How have you found the sort of the market post-lockdown, Ed?
Well, interestingly, I think a lot of people have tried to do a lot with who they've got. So they've thought, right, let's be really, really busy. And the last thing they thought about actually to start with, a couple of months ago, whenever we May the 13th, I think we came out of lockdown. To start, they didn't really think about using any outsourced servicing, whereas suddenly we're beginning to see our volumes go through the roof because people are just thinking, hang on a minute, we're so overwhelmed. I mean, it's interesting that both our processes are sort of at either end. Well, not either end. I mean, we were discussing before we started recording this how, of course, most estate agents tend to employ people who are having to do lots of different jobs. One of them is prospecting for leads. Another is doing viewings. Another is trying to sell financial services. You know, a lot is expected of an estate agent these days. And the trouble is they haven't got time to do it all. So from your perspective, you're obviously at the beginning of the process and we're at the just before agreeing a sales stage. Is that how you see it? Do you see that people are being asked to do too much? What would you say to that?
Absolutely. It's the hot topic at the moment is outsourcing. You know, if I was setting up a business in today's market against, let's say, 10 years ago, initially I would be looking at what tech I can employ within the business and then what elements I could outsource. And then I'd be looking at the staff to complement those tech platforms and outsourced services. You know, 10 years ago would be in the complete reverse. I would be looking at what staff members I need and then what tech and what outsourcing would complement those. So we've been inundated with requests for our assistance. We don't just do the lead management and the prospecting. So we are in essence a full-end client services team, so we can do call overflow management or actually front of house call management. Because we're working directly through the agent CRMs, it's unlike other answering services because we actually action the vast majority of the inquiries or requests that come through the phone line. And we also partner with wonderful firms like yourself and like ASAP for sale progression. So it's almost like a quick plug-in to relieve the strains and the stresses of a extremely busy office, and making sure that that customer experience and customer journeys, bang on point.
Yeah, I mean, both of us are members of this thing called the Innovation Collaboration Group, which has lots of people who provide these services. And I'm fascinated by the idea that there are so many jobs that estate agents being asked to do. The problem, of course, is that traditional estate agencies has always had that fixed cost as part of its setup. So they employ people, and then when they get busy, they think, oh, I need another person. When actually, perhaps exactly what you just said, Ish, maybe people should be putting the tech at the center of what they do, and then thinking, who do we need to service that? Because we all know that having lots of leads is great, and they obviously need to be triaged, qualified, worked out who's good, who's bad, who to keep in touch with, whatever. But actually, you still need that human to go and sit on the sofa and try and win the instruction. So that's probably that bit. I'm just wondering which other bit. I suppose once they've been to see something, you need to ring and try and get the offer out of them. Is that client services part of what you do as well?
Yeah. I mean, it's although prospecting sort of sounds like quite an easy gig, there's a lot more to it. It's all about systemizing and procedurizing what you're doing, building really robust engagement plans, and it's about continuity of contact. Not just 1 hour a day. It is, let's say you get a lead in at 10 in the morning. That call should be made within the first 5 to 10 minutes, because your conversion rate will increase by about 30% by calling it within those first 5-10 minutes, rather than leaving it, let's say, an hour. And I know good estate agents will get in touch with these leads within the hour, but they may only make 1 or 2 calls. Our average is between 4 and 5 calls to get in touch with any new lead, no matter what the lead source. I mean, I know that's pretty general. So a lot of agents are sort of cutting it short by about 2 or 3 calls. And we just booked an evaluation and got a listing that was nurtured over 2.5 years with 20 calls, or 19 calls it was actually, to eventually get that appointment or that lead appraised and listed. So it's a long-term strategy. And we do things like miss next call follow-ups, so we can run a report on a daily basis to see any calls that were due to be made by valuers that weren't made. We can then make those on their behalf and rebuild any bridges that may have been burnt by not making the call on the day that was promised. So it's really bespoke, actually. We can do MA follow-up calls within 24 hours of any appraisals being carried out, to find out how the appraisal was carried out by the valuer, and it gives us an opportunity to objection handle and try.
Well, one of the issues that we get asked more than anything else is about brand, how we represent brand. So when we go out and show properties, we don't have any issues with brand, because we're reliable local door openers for people. Yeah. How do you get around the issue of brand? Is it a question you get asked, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, look, we do a deep dive into the business before we actually start our prospecting or lead management service. I don't want to sound too blasé about this, but the process is very similar no matter which agency you're working with. The services, the fee structure, the position in the market is slightly different, but the essence of the call is very, very similar. That could be for an online agent, a hybrid agent, franchise, corporate model, local high street. The pitch is very, very similar. And I think, and you again, your negs will probably be trained up to a certain level with regards to sales training and making sure that they work well with the clients. It's all about building rapport. I do a lot of mystery shopping with agents, and the feeling I get is a lot of the conversations are pretty sterile. They can be a bit robotic, where, what we really push is that rapport building, that long-term relationship building. And, if I hear laughter on the phone, I know the guys are doing a good job, because they're communicating with people on the right level. People buy from people in today's market. The pushy salesman of yesteryear just doesn't ring true.
I know, but it is a difficult thing to get over to agents, isn't it? Because I am consistently surprised. One of the first things we did was do a deep dive into the consciousness of buyers. And when we launched within our first year, we did a huge survey. Well, I say huge survey. At the time, it seemed big to us, 250 buyers, and I would love it to have been 2,500. And we asked them what they wanted from their estate agent and these are buyers. So these are not people who are thinking of selling, who obviously have a completely different set of expectations. And an amazing 87% of them just said they just wanted to get in when they wanted to get in to see a property. And what was equally embarrassing was that a very similar number said that they actually would rather not be shown by an estate agent. Now,
really?
I mean, well, simply because I think salespeople these days have become, some are very good at what they do, as you say, and they build rapport, because we all know that having a good relationship with a buyer means if they've got something to sell, they're likely to give you it to sell. But these days you can do a lot of that rapport building on the phone, exactly as you were just describing. What we find is people are much more impressed with ringing up and saying, I want to go and see it on Sunday, and the agent saying, yeah, that's fine. When do you want to go? Because normally, in my day, certainly, and I've been, you I think have been in property for 16 years. I've been in it for over 40 years. And I can tell you, back in the 70s, well, back in the late 70s, if someone, or the early 80s, if someone rang you up and said, can I see a property on a Sunday? You said no, but you can see it on Tuesday afternoon at 3. And they would do that. These days, people have a completely different set of expectations. And I think that agents can make themselves much more consumer-facing, service-centric. They can be really much better. And frankly, the idea that they can get their prospecting done, produce the leads, the agent can go in, win those leads when they finally say, yes, I want a market appraisal. Yes, I'm moving. And frankly, these days, given that it takes 15 years for people to move, sometimes that's a lot. That's where your 19 calls come from. And equally, from our point of view, we worked out recently, it's on our blog, that the cost of a viewing that an estate agent does these days is actually over £30. That's what it costs.
Wow.
That's their fixed costs. And that's all year round, whether they want to do it or whether they're doing it or not. So just,
what are your costs, Ed?
well, they vary between, we'll do a one-off viewing for £19.99, but we can do timed viewing slots in a 1 hour open house, 40 quid. So that's 10 quid per slot.
Really reasonable, really reasonable.
Well, I mean, the trouble is, I always think people need to look at value, not cost. If people worry about the cost, the worst thing we get is when someone, I know it's not irritating, but it's frustrating when someone turns around to me and says, oh, we can get a school leaver for £10 an hour. Why do we want to pay you 20 quid to go and do a viewing? But that's not the point. You've got to manage someone. We used to have at Douglas & Gordon, the reason I started Viewber was that we had 18 viewing staff for our weekends. They only worked Saturday. There was only one of them. Their diary was full by Tuesday, and there was a regular turnover of them. So I said, when I was walking around a field near here with my wife, she said, come on, there must be a problem in your business that needs solving. And I said, well, we have real problems with getting viewings done at weekends. I know we're losing a lot of business. I wish I had a service I could dip into and out of when I needed it. And that's exactly what it is. If people looked at it that simply, I think life would be a lot easier.
I think a lot of businesses do look initially for a solely on an ROI perspective. I think you have to look at the customer experience, the customer journey, and the value added by services like yours and mine. It's not just a solely a financial cost or issue. It's about the whole customer journey and what the modern day consumer wants, which is
such a good point.
Yesterday. I had a conversation with an agent who will remain nameless, who said to me, we will not do Saturday appointments because anyone who wants to have a valuation carried out on a Saturday is not a motivated seller, because if they were motivated, they would take a day off through the week to fit in with our team. And, it is just an archaic way of thinking. Another agent, again, who will remain nameless, said to me, I don't want my leads called within 10 minutes because we will seem desperate. And I said, that's a complete wrong way to look at it. If we hear the word persistence or proactive, that's a real positive. It's what the modern day consumer wants, to be seen as being desperate because you have a brand that may be perceived as the Rolex of the brand in that area. In reality, the modern day consumer doesn't really care too much about how long you've been running for. It's all about whether they like you, whether the service that you give is on point, and whether you do what you say you're going to do. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people in the market, who are more my vintage, they're quite happy with the old state of play. My kids are going to be 27 shortly, and by the way, I gather you're about to have twins, so good luck with that one, mate. I can see you having twins myself. I think that when my kids are lucky enough to start thinking about renting themselves or buying or whatever it is, they are not going to want to go and talk to someone. They're going to want it to be done on when they want to do it. They're going to want to do it online. They're going to want to use different communication methods. And this whole COVID thing has given people such a good opportunity to try and change that. Look, I'm well aware people will have a relatively short attention span-ish, and I think you've given a great overview. I mean, I've learned something. I hope people have learned a little bit more about Viewber if they're logging in to sort of find out about either of these services. And they're just two of the services that are available on the ICG website, icgapproved.co.uk, but also viewber.co.uk. Where do they go to for Prospect Engine?
Prospectengine.co.uk. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter.
Cool. Okay. Well, look, and if anybody's got any questions, please do get in touch with either of us. We're still, I would imagine you are heavily involved day to day, as am I. You're a lot younger than I am, so you can probably devote more energy to it. I find it absolutely exhausting, but I'm enjoying it.
I'm sure my hair will go grey after the twins are born, my friend.
Good stuff. Well, listen, Ish, thanks for your time. I hope you learned something from me, and people get in touch, see what you want to know.
Wonderful. Thanks for your time, Ed.
Thanks a lot, Ish.